After the dust and snow settled on the Battle of Winterfell, the business of the last war was never going to wait too long. And for all the suggestions that episode 4 of the final season, retrospectively named The Last of the Starks, was going to be something of a cooler episode to cleanse the palate of the heart-busting action of the last night, it felt more like an escalation. Focusing more on Dany's mental state and buoyed by Emilia Clarke's best ever work as the Breaker of Chains, it was a fine episode and definitely one of the best post-book episodes. There were shocks, emotional gut punches, and great character work, and, as ever, a lot to unpick in the aftermath. I'm Josh from WhatCulture.com, and this is everything we learned from Game of Thrones Season 8, Episode 4. Number 13, Lord Gendry. On the one hand, Dany proclaiming Gendry a true lord and giving him Storm's End as well as his real surname is great and a smart move for her, given that it means that she has a strong ally in place immediately. But then, almost immediately, we see the cost of this as he proposes to Arya and she turns him down straight away. It's doubtful she'd have been the type to settle down for a stint of domestic bliss or whatever that stands for in Westeros, but seeing his pleasure at fitting in the system certainly dashed any lingering potential for that to happen. To be fair to her, it never made sense that she'd be retired by marriage, but it's still painful to watch. Number 12, Dany feels isolated and makes Jon choose. Now that she's cursed with the knowledge of Jon's true parentage and of his great acclaim to the Iron Throne, Dany feels increasingly isolated and haunted by the idea that the North will rally behind him if they're presented with the choice of the pair. She's right, of course, but Jon affirms his commitment to her and his lack of interest in the throne overall. Clearly struggling with that idea, Dany tries to make Jon promise not to tell anyone about his family's secret because the knowledge is incredibly dangerous. Consequently, the fact that he then goes and immediately tells his siblings is going to come at a serious cost to their relationship and her trust of them. He's effectively made himself her enemy, it's just that neither of them know it yet. Number 11, Clegane Bowl. The most important takeaway from this episode for fans of the Hound is that he's going to go and deal with his unfinished business in King's Landing. In other words, he's going to deal with his brother and we're going to get Clegane Bowl. Let's get ready to rumble, my dudes. Interestingly, Arya follows up her denial of Gendry's proposal by following the Hound south. They were never going to sit out the fight, and honestly, it's a lot better that their final parts in the final reckoning have been reshaped to be more personal than just being a cog in a big battle machine. Number 10. Dany has more allies and a surprising number of Dothraki. Despite the North not really taking to her, Dany is not a completely unwelcome ruler. Yara Greyjoy has retaken the Iron Isles for her, and the new Prince of Dawn has pledged his support as well. We probably won't see either in the big fight, but it's nice to have friends. More surprising is the fact that the Dothraki were not wiped out completely in the Battle of Winterfell. They're mentioned a couple of times, and the suggestion seems to be that there are enough of them to form part of the army Jon takes south to King's Landing. Number 9, Bronn turns on Cersei. Whether it matters or not in the long run, Bronn is back, has turned on Cersei, and is being rewarded for not killing Tyrion with the gift of Highgarden, making him a legitimate power player. Provided both he and Tyrion survive, that is, anyway. There's just a small issue of that. He's also a solid snake now, apparently, and can just slip into strongholds and slip out while carrying a big-ass crossbow, and nobody will say a thing. Interestingly, he's also said that he's sitting out the final battle because his fighting days are done, so we may well have mostly seen the last of him as an active character. Number 8, Tommen and Ghost get a happy ending. With the war against the Night King done, Tommen reveals that he's taking what's left of the free folk back north to their homes. He says that they have no place in the south and that it just doesn't feel right, which takes away a tough part of Dany's army, but at least means that we won't have to suffer the pain of watching Tommen die. If you listen very, very closely, you can hear Simon Gallagher somewhere sobbing tears of joy. It's a bittersweet ending because it removes one of the most rewarding characters in this entire show, and he's not going alone. After many years of mistreatment, Ghost has been retired rather than being killed as most of us probably expected him to be. Jon's mistreatment of him is a travesty, but at least now he's free. Now, if we could just get that Tommen and Ghost spin-off, that would be really, really great. HBO, just make it happen. Number 7, Rhaegal got screwed. Speaking of beloved fur babies avoiding death, Riggle came back from serious injury from his last episode and then was shockingly killed by Euron and his magical invisible fleet. With their newly mounted scorpions, they provided too much for Riggle, who was brutally skewered and then sent into the sea, dramatically damaging Dany's chances of simply flying to King's Landing and burning everything until Cersei is either killed or gave up. Number 6, the fleet is destroyed, and is there a spy? On top of Rhaegal falling, Euron turns his scorpions on the Targaryen fleet, decimating them and sending Dany's forces back to Dragonstone on the tides. The thing we have to consider here then is how the hell Euron knew to be where he was with his fleet at exactly the right time. Like, surely there has to be a spy in Dany's ranks. It's not the first time the idea has come up, but there's just no way that Euron could have possibly pulled off that victory without knowing in advance exactly where he had to be hiding in order to take down Rhaegal. It cannot be accidental, and if it is, it's very, very bad writing. Who the spy could be at this stage, though, is anyone's guess. Number 5, more of Cersei's plan revealed. We saw 2 more details of Cersei's plan to win the last war and cement her position of power in this episode. First, we saw her bringing all of King's Landing's people within the walls of the Red Keep, which serves both her attempt to further weaponize her fear of Dany as a wild invader, and also gives her a human shield comprised of thousands of different parts. Even if Dany were to win, the people would never take her as a ruler if she just had to murder thousands of them to get to the throne. Cersei would basically win even if she lost. The other aspect of her plan that we saw was using Euron to cover her pregnancy by Jaime. This episode, she outright told him that he was the father, which adds added flavour to the coming reunion between Cersei and Jaime. Number 4. The Starks and Varys know too much. Despite the fact that Dany implores Jon not to tell anyone about his secret, he then goes and tells Sansa and Arya just straight away. Luckily for Dany though, he swears them to secrecy as well, so it makes total sense that Sansa inevitably and almost immediately tells Tyrion, who is concerned about the secret getting out, so he tells Varys. Great idea, dude. Just spot on that one. Very, very smart. This is a little bit like trying to plug holes in a boat by shooting it repeatedly with several scorpions. It's just not going to work, and it's not going to have a happy ending. Giving Sansa the information and further seasoning her dislike and distrust of Dany as a potential ruler is one thing, but giving it to Varys is something else entirely. The moment he found out that there is a better candidate for the Iron Throne, particularly as questions over Dany's volatility are further raised, was only ever going to lead to him doing something for the good of the realm. Varys knows too much now, and it's either going to lead to him killing Dany or to him being killed in an attempt to overthrow or kill her. Quite which of those you think will happen likely depends on how much you think Varys' status as the mouthpiece of the realm protects him from the machinations of the Great Game. Number 3. Jaimes' conflict sets him up killing Cersei. After giving us a payoff to Brienne and Jaime's romantic flirtations over the past few seasons, and then needlessly stomping Tommen's heart into dust for all of about 3 seconds, though he does bounce back quite quickly, it all crumbles to ash pretty much immediately as we see Jaime's internal conflict burst out of him yet again. Clearly, Cersei's power is so corrupting that both of her brothers believe she is redeemable despite everything she's told them otherwise. It seems we're getting a hint here that Jaime will attempt to reason with Cersei to save her, but it's far more likely that this is a story maneuver to help set him up as her killer. He's one of the only people who could get close to her after all, so Valonqar theory confirmed and all that. Number 2, Missandei is no more. Talk about a show ripping your heart out of your chest and throwing it into a fiery dragon pit of fire. I'm sad, I don't know what words are anymore. Euron's kidnapping of Missandei gave Cersei her opportunity to prove that she is more of a monster than the Night King. And she did just that by tormenting Dany with the sight of her best friend and closest confidant chained and vulnerable. And then, in an echo of Joffrey's murder of Ned Stark, just when it seemed like Tyrion's appeal to her humanity might be landing, the Queen coldly told Missandei to say her last words and then had the Mountain chop her head clean off. Watching Dany's reaction was bad enough, but to see Grey Worm watch his beloved and his dreams of an ideal future fall to the floor dead was heartbreaking in an entirely different way. All in all, this really wasn't a very good episode for romance, Sam and Gilly aside, of course. Number 1, the Mad Queen. In quick succession, we've seen Dany lose some of her closest allies and beginning to question some of her other relationships herself. Jorah and Kono were killed at Winterfell, Tyrion proved himself untrustworthy in her eyes, Jon is now concerned because of his blood, Varys wants Jon on the Iron Throne, and Missandei is dead. She is more isolated than ever before, and she doesn't really have anyone other than perhaps Grey Worm to truly rely on. We're being fed imagery to suggest that she's going to follow in the footsteps of her father and then lose control. Considering the episode is so invested in the idea of the inevitability of destiny, that's very possible, but we may not see it fully. What is clear though is that Varys has now taken up a position in opposition to his queen, and Dany is dangerously isolated and dangerously emotional after the death of Missandei. The show wants us to think it's heading in a very precise direction, which of course might mean that it's all a trick to dupe us again. God, I love it, and I can't believe there's only 2 episodes left. So that's everything we learned from Game of Thrones Season 8, Episode 4. I know what you guys think down in the comments below. I personally liked the episode, but I know it's been quite divisive, so I want to know your thoughts down there in reasons to why it might not be so good. And also, are you looking forward to these final 2 episodes? I've heard next week's going to be a bloody blinder, and I'm again scared for it because I don't want anyone else to die, but of course they're going to. Either way, while you're down there, could you give us a like, share, subscribe, and head over to whatculture.com for more lists and news like this every single day. Even if you don't, though, I've been Josh. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye.